Welcome to Bent TV. I'm Andy McNamara, and tonight I'm speaking to Asiel Adan Sanchez. Welcome.
Thank you.
You are a Mexican national originally studying medicine in Australia and now an Australian.
That's right.
Cool.
Fully fledged Australian.
Yeah. And we were fortunate to see you at Fed Square recently at the Orlando Memorial, speaking, I guess, not directly, but on behalf of non-white queer people.
Yeah, well, the invitation kind of came through, and originally it was kind of another speaker that had been invited, but he was kind enough to say, I'm not from, a Latinx background. You might talk to Asiel and, they might be interested. And I initially thought it was going to be a relatively small thing. I thought it was going to be like 10 people in the corner of Fed Square, and that's it. But then I showed up, and there was this huge crowd, and I walked into the speaker stand, and there was, Bill Shorten and a band, and the U.S. consulate, and I thought, oh gosh, I'm about to push your countries under the bus, and here we go. So it was quite an exciting opportunity and quite a unique experience, I suppose. Yeah.
And you had some strong opinions, and a lot of the audience were very excited and impressed by that. And we're going to explore a few of those thoughts, I think. Let's start with the phrase LGBTIQ, which to most of us is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex and queer. What does it mean to you?
Well, to me, it means such a kind of diverse community, and I don't think there is any one acronym that we can, fit everyone into. So it just keeps expanding and expanding, every 6 months by the looks of it. But at the same time, it comes from a very specific kind of background, and a lot of the terms come from kind of either American or European thought. So for example, in Mexico, our indigenous communities have muxes, which I guess you would consider as trans, I suppose. But in reality, they're seen as their own specific gender, and it's a very culturally specific gender. And they're valued members of the community. Our incidence of gender dysphoria is very low in those communities because they're so reverenced and accepted and loved. And similarly, in Australia, sister boys and sister girls and brother boys.
Yes.
Are part of the indigenous community, and we have Hitcheras and Indias and Fafafinis and so on. So a lot of those kind of trans and gender diverse terms don't encompass that cultural diversity, I suppose. So I feel like it's quite specific.
Right. So what you're saying is there's a sort of a de facto racism, I guess, within the queer community because it's all focused on the Western white model. But is there direct racism also within the queer community? I
feel there is quite a lot of both direct and indirect. As you mentioned, we kind of just saw that in the terminology that we use to describe ourselves. But I mean, if you go on a lot of the kind of the dating sites, and particularly within the gay community, there's the racism that's just blatant. It's not indirect, it's not hidden, it's just there in your face. And we have to work to kind of challenge against that. And it takes that extra bit of effort to kind of have that conversation with people and say, is this space inclusive? And when you go to kind of gay spaces and you feel a bit uncomfortable, you start to wonder, why? And it's because you see yourself surrounded by white people, and it can be quite confronting, I suppose.
Asiel, how do you identify?
So I identify as non-binary in terms of gender. In terms of sexuality, I guess somewhere in between like gay and pan. But it's I guess a new space for me because Latin America comes from such a strict machismo, very gendered, very masculine kind of place, and I just found myself always ostracized by it. So to me, for example, the first time that I saw kind of a Frida Kahlo painting, and I saw the way she played with gender, and I saw a lot of her strength reflecting in her femininity, and I thought that speaks to me more than any of the masculinity that I've seen throughout my life. So I realized that a lot of my experience came from kind of this other space that wasn't masculine. And that's where it all kind of came from. Yeah.
It sounds like you've been on a journey and you're possibly still on it.
Yeah, definitely, by the sense of it. And I feel for queer people of color, often the journey is just not coming to terms with their gender or sexuality or identity. It's also coming to terms with their cultural heritage and reconciling those two. So we kind of have to come out twice almost. Yeah.
And I guess for many non-white cultures, the coming out is a lot more difficult too because the cultures are often a lot more conservative.
Yeah, that's right. It might not necessarily be that they're conservative per se, but that we think of gender and sexuality in a different cultural paradigm. So for example, if I came out to my extended family in Mexico, they wouldn't know quite what to do with the gender or sexuality, just because the way that we framed it has been in this very, ethnocentric Anglo kind of discourse. So a lot of the time it is about finding how to navigate those spaces, and a lot of the time we're not given the space to come out and have those conversations. I mean, in my time here in Australia, I've only met a handful of other, gay Mexicans who have been here, and a handful of other queer Mexicans. And it's very much the same for other queer people of color that I've met around. The spaces to have those conversations are just not there.
Do we need safe spaces for non-white queer people?
I think we do. And a lot of the time, I guess, when these conversations kind of come up in the mainstream gay community, it's kind of seen as a non-issue, or it's seen as an issue that doesn't apply to them. Therefore, it's not, a gay thing. It's a something else thing. So having those specific spaces to come on and talk specifically very much about your culture and how you navigate it, and what are your role models, what inspired you, how you told your family, how you didn't tell your family, all those conversations often don't happen within those gay spaces, and are often not given the chance to happen in those spaces. So in my experience, we do need to have specific things, I guess, for queer people of color to come together and really talk to each other, find a way of mediating their culture and their gender, sexuality, whatever it may be.
Diversity within diversity, I guess, is one of the things. What are your thoughts on that, and how can you celebrate it?
Definitely. I mean, the LGBTIQ community is already such a diverse kind of platform in itself. Specifically, when we're thinking about like gender, there's so many ways you could express your gender. But to have that expanded upon and to include cultures and backgrounds that are not specifically white, that are not always kind of the same representations over and over and over and over, and not the same narratives over and over and over and over, is extremely important. So in my own experience, I've never seen broader cultures kind of acknowledged in LGBTIQ spaces. So expanding that diversity within diversity is very important.
Awesome. I totally agree. You've been watching Bent TV. Our guest has been Asiel Adan Sanchez. Thanks so much. See you soon.